Welcome to the Ferraris Law Q&A series, where we answer real questions from real consumers. Today's topic, solar and door-to-door fraud, and what you need to know before signing a solar panel deal. Answering today's questions would be Christine Ferraris, that is our lead attorney here at Ferraris Law, and she will be helping us shedding some light on the following questions. So our first question, a question I had was, what if I signed up for a rooftop solar through a door-to-door rep, but now I'm stuck with high monthly payments and no real savings? What can I do?
Thank you for the question, Lizette. Home solicitation sales generally in every state have a protection. There's a federal protection and usually a state law protection about cancellation, and the notice of the ability to cancel must be in the sales document. Often it's a short period of time, and unfortunately many people are not alone in finding themselves in situations where they're not having a savings, because you don't usually understand that in the first 3 days of a contract, especially when the sales are highly pressured. The good news is there are legal protections besides the home solicitation statutes, such as breach of contract and so forth. We do get questions about this and have helped consumers in this area. Oftentimes you may need to bring in someone who is a specialist in this area and can review documentation to see exactly what was promised in terms of the advertising, and then what your actual incoming savings is relative to the energy savings and so forth, and what you're actually receiving in terms of energy. So if you feel misled or trapped by a solar contract, we encourage you to reach out to someone, a professional. There is a national organization of consumer advocates called the National Association of Consumer Advocates. And there is generally an attorney in almost every state, and even if they're in one state, they may be licensed in another. I would start there to find someone to at least speak to about what you're experiencing. Thank you.
Okay, second question. Should I be concerned if financing and tax credits for rooftop solar changes? Should I be concerned if it changes?
Lizette, there are changes this year in the United States relative to tax credits. There's a 30% residential solar tax credit. Some section 25D of the tax code that's going to be eliminated December 31st, 2025. So I would encourage folks to contact their solar companies about this and finding out whether or not, I believe the installation has to be completed by that date to be able to get the credit. The end of this credit is brought on by what has been identified as the One Big Beautiful Act, which was signed on July 4th, 2025. So the incentives for homeowner-owned systems was stopped by this law that was recently passed by the current federal administration. And so I would encourage folks to reach out if they are thinking about it or if they are in the process of installation, to make sure they can take advantage of this solar tax credit that is ending.
Thank you. And then third question, how can I tell if my solar loan was predatory or unfair?
Here's some red flags relative to whether your loan was somehow unfair and deceptive conduct related to it. And if you look in hindsight, oftentimes we don't know that when we're in the middle of a transaction, but looking back and looking at the paperwork, we might wonder, did I sign something that I shouldn't have signed? Or I didn't remember them representing this when they spoke to me, but it's in the paperwork, sometimes buried in the paperwork. Because a lot of this paperwork is like when you buy a car or purchase a house, it has a lot of information, much of which we don't always understand. If there are higher interest rates than what you understood and were promised, that's something to look at. And they may initially say that, oh, your interest rate is this, but then you look closely at the paperwork and see that it will increase over time. Sometimes they promise that you'll have the option to refinance and blah, 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 but that may not always be the case. So it's something to pay attention to. Similarly, any payment increases that where the interest is deferred for a certain period of time, again, buried in the fine print. You want to make sure you know exactly what you're paying for the life of the loan. Sometimes, there may not be any real savings with, depending on your utility bill. So it's really do your homework about what savings they're promising and make sure it's in writing, exactly what they're promising verbally. If you're not really sure about that you're given copies of the financing documents so that you can make you can really look at them, and if you can't understand them, find someone to help you understand them. There are homeowner advocates and other folks out there, and it's better to get the help before the transaction is finalized. And sometimes you don't always get the paperwork. Make sure you get the paperwork within that 3 days of the cancellation period under the home solicitation statutes, so that you can actually have the right to cancel and have all the information to know whether or not you should cancel. And my last thing is that, often they're going to promise tax benefits and other benefits, but then in the contract itself it says you shouldn't rely on any verbal representations. That's kind of a red flag. So whatever they promise verbally, you want to make sure it's in the paperwork and make sure you look at that within those first 3 days. Thank you.